Hello everyone and welcome back. We've reached winter at last, and the environment drastically changes to reflect that. Okay, so the simple tunic, it's better at cold. Fur hood, fur boots. So that means that we're only wearing the hose. Put that away. And we have 80% cold protection here. And we actually have minus 30% hot protection. So if we wore this in summer, we'd overheat. But right now, our effective temperature is 19 degrees. Which is warm enough, really. Gone are the foliage on the trees and the bushes. Instead, the landscape is covered in a blanket of white. We completed last season most of the basic infrastructure for a thriving village. So we'll also be discussing longer term goals that you should strive for after your first year. There's no harvestable or sowable crops in winter, so the only thing you need to worry about is repairing any buildings that require it. That means you can devote all your time to your chosen activity. You can craft, you can build, you can mine, but you definitely should consider hunting as something to do in winter. When you hunt during the other seasons, the ground is covered in growth and small animals are difficult to see. You might hear hares and foxes, but they're difficult to spot. The tracker perk in the hunting skill tree will help you spot animals despite this, but in winter, animals are much more visible. On top of that, the nights are bright, so unlike the other seasons, you can see almost as well at night as you can during the day. That means more hours for hunting, so you can easily spend days at a time hunting, and only coming back to base when you're overloaded with meat and other goods. At this point, you might want to look at upgrading to a bow instead of using spears. A bow requires linen thread, so you can either wait until you have the crops and the sewing hut to make your own linen thread, or just buy some. You can also use bird traps to ensure a steady supply of feathers, and your metalworking infrastructure should allow you to make copper arrows for maximum damage. Bows work in the same way as spears. You have to hold the right mouse button to aim, the left to draw, and let go of the left button when you want to fire. Alternatively, release the right button only to release the draw without firing if you don't think you can hit your target. Overall, bows have greater range than spears, so you can fire them from further away without spooking animals. And they have less drop, so your accuracy should be greater. Generally don't want to bother with small animals like foxes or hares, unless it's for a quest goal or because you need fur. It's much more cost effective to hunt larger animals like deer, or if you're feeling confident, wolves, but beware because they come in packs. Do not hunt bears or visons until you have a more powerful bow or you know what you're doing, but feel free to try after saving. Always have a small supply of healing herbs on hand and in your storage so you can deal with any damage you might take from aggressive animals. Picking up sticks and stones also works well in winter, because of the lack of grass and other plants on the ground. The sticks and stones stand out nicely. But you should also plan your medium to long term strategy. Looking at the tech tree, there's several milestones you should aim for. One is the sewing hut. This is important because it allows you to process flax you grow in your fields into linen thread. This thread can then be used to make hunting tools like bows and spears. Iron spears require wool thread, but every other spear and all bows require linen instead, so linen is enough for hunting purposes. The sewing hut will also allow you to make linen clothing for yourself and employ some additional villagers. Even though you can't see most of your body, I still like to dress up and wear gloves. One of the problems with crafting linen goods as your main source of income is that you need a steady supply of linen thread, and each requires 10 flax stalks. That means that you need some sizable plots in order to sow enough flax in spring to keep up with demand for an entire year. On top of that, if you have animals, you also need to grow oats to provide animal feed. That means alternating between the two each spring, or having large fields dedicated to flax. It's perfectly viable to have other fields dedicated to flax, but I prefer to grow an occasional crop and wait until I can make wool-based clothing instead. What I do recommend if you want to make income from sewing huts is to rely on footwear. Boots and shoes available in Sewing Tech 1 and 2 only require leather or fur. If you set 2 villagers to harvest leather at the hunting lodge, you can get enough supply to keep one seamstress working full time on making shoes and simple shoes at Tech Level 1. You can supply fur via your own hunting. Footwear sells for prices comparable to metal daggers, so this is a good way to supplement your income without needing your active participation, though you can manually craft some if your stocks of leather and fur get too large. Higher level sewing huts only give you more worker spots, so you don't have to upgrade as soon as you reach new tech levels. We touched on this previously, but only NPCs can harvest limestone, so it's worth having at least one excavation shed to produce enough to get the last upgrade to the houses of the village. The rest of the time you can have the villager dig for clay. Once you unlock and build a level 2 workshop, you gain access to a pottery wheel. The first clay items you can craft are only for sale or decoration. The income from clay and pottery is very low, but it's one way to keep building technology and crafting technology points accruing while keeping people gainfully employed. If you hold off on building workshop level 1, then workshop level 2 also gives you access to wooden bowls and plates for cooking. Overall, I regard workshop level 2 as the first workshop you should invest in. But it's no big deal if you build a level 1 workshop, because your wife should be providing plenty of logs, so it doesn't matter if you waste a few. Later on, workshop level 3 will make bottles available to craft. They sell for much more, so they are commercially viable. But they're also needed to make wines and beers once you reach Tavern Tech level 3. Mines is a key technology you should be aiming for in the building tech tree. Firstly, mines allow you to assign NPCs to mine ores. Until you unlock them, you will have to do all your mining manually. Secondly, constructing a mine at a cave allows you to access iron ore deposits. Unfortunately, you need 5,000 building tech points to unlock mines. You get 1 tech point from each rock you mine, so expect this to take a long time. You can also speed things up by constructing and destroying buildings. Preferably something that mostly uses logs, because you should have a surplus of them. Like sewing huts, all smithy buildings allow you to craft all items. You should only rebuild it if you want to employ more people in it, though it's not a bad idea to rebuild the smithy at level 3, since that's the last building level and you get better durability. Once you have access to iron tools, you should immediately swap over to them. Making iron bars is as easy as copper bars because you only need 1 type of metal, versus the copper and tin required for bronze. But iron tools are the most durable in the game. The recipes will cost a bit, but by that stage you should have money coming out of your ears. Tavern buildings are unique at the moment in that each level gives you new capabilities. Tavern level 2 unlocked the baking oven, so you could use flour that you make at the barn to bake bread and other goods. Level 3 unlocks juices and alcoholic beverages that you make with wild berries or fruits from orchards in combination with bottles from Workshop Tech 3. Version 1.0 of the game seems to separate the tavern workbenches into separate buildings. So you'll have a building for baking and a kitchen that you can build separately to assign villagers to bake and cook. That would mean that the tavern focuses exclusively on juices and other beverages. I might touch on those details once the full game comes out. It also seems that in the released version, villagers will need hydration. Wells will be buildable to automate water gathering, and that will mean beverages will become much more valuable than they have been up to now. But at the very least, buckets will be needed to gather water for villagers to drink. The key tech you should be aiming for if you want to have large-scale crop harvesting is a pigsty. Up to this point, any fertilizer you use in farming will have been produced by rotting food like berries or buying it. But you want to automate that as much as possible, and that means pigs. I currently have another 12 by 12 large field that I use for large-scale crop growing, in conjunction with my 2 by 8 small field. 6 fully grown pigs produce enough manure to have 2 harvests per year on both fields, with plenty of spare manure each season, so I could easily double my fields without running short of manure. The tech should become unlocked within a few years, but in the meantime, you should make sure that you have enough animal feed to keep the pigs fed. We sowed a starter crop of rye last autumn, so if you do the same for oats in spring, followed by full crops of both, we should have enough food to keep the pigs well fed. So you'd want a reasonable level of manure production by year 3. Buying young animals costs much less, and mature animals reproduce. So you can start with 1 young animal of each sex, and over time they'll multiply as long as you have someone assigned to look after them. That means that in year 2, you should be constructing a pigsty and buying piglets. They'll mature by year 3, and in the meantime, you can continue rotting berries to produce fertilizer for your fields. The other key animal is sheep. They produce wool, and that's a key component for higher quality clothing. And wool is produced regularly as long as you have someone assigned to look after them. So it's a little bit more predictable than linen. Goats and cows produce milk, and chicken and geese produce eggs. Eggs are used in baking to produce higher quality breads and pastries. It seems that in the full release there'll be recipes that use milk. Overall, high quality food is useful, but it's not critical. The stable unlocks horses and donkeys. Both allow you to carry more than you can by yourself, and horses allow you to travel far faster than you can on foot. That's useful if you're trying to do something like mining from caves other than the one where we built a resource storage, or traveling to sell goods. By the end of the first year, you should have most of the infrastructure you'll need for the rest of the game. Within the next few years, you'll be able to craft better clothing, tools, and weapons, cook more varied and better types of foods, and expand your village. It's all up to you. One of the final words of advice that I have for beginner players is that it's not a race. It's perfectly fine to take your time and play as slow as you like. I've squeezed in as many things in this first year as a beginner might need to know, but it's perfectly okay to take several years to get to the same point, or even ignore certain activities. Maybe you just don't feel like smithing, maybe you just hate farming, maybe you just want to live with your wife and son and nobody else. At the end of the day, this game is about providing you a sandbox to express yourself, so feel free to play however you choose to. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments. Feel free to leave a like, subscribe and hit the bell button to be notified when new videos come out. See you soon.